What happens when doing good isn't enough? When your best intentions still end in heartbreak? Today's guest then learned the lesson deep in the jungle where one child's death changed the course of his life. Florian went from aspiring comedian to impact investor, mobilizing nearly $1 billion to rebuild the very systems that once failed him. This isn't a story about capital, it's a story about conscience, conviction, and what really matters to invest in humanity. Hi, Florian. Thank you for being here.
Great pleasure, Ahmad. And what a nice way to start off.
I am so curious to hear your thoughts because I think you've taken impact investing to the next level. But let's start with perhaps your origin and you studied dramatic arts to become a comedian. Which is an interesting different take. What version of yourself are you running towards, or perhaps away from?
Oh, it's a beautiful question. So again, just to be precise, I grew up in southern Germany at the Swiss border in the Black Forest in a small village. I had in early stages been bullied, yeah, physically aggravated, and that's why my parents put me into sports, specifically judo, to toughen up, to be stronger. And then I went all into it and really went into actually finishing high school in a sporting school with judo. I was won a European championship. I was in the national team in Germany in the Bundesliga, but it was clear for me that's not a profession. I just took it to an extreme, which was a way actually for me to learn a lot. And judo is not a martial arts to kill; it's actually to use the inertia of others in your favor. It's a smooth way at the end. But again, for me, it was clear I wouldn't be doing this as a profession. So after high school, I stopped. And then interesting part is I wanted to study dramatic arts. Yeah, I wanted to become a stand-up comedian, which I never studied because my father said, I know you love music and you love to make and entertain people, and you love people to laugh. But maybe you want to study something normal first. Yeah. And then you can still try because there are a lot of artists out there not really making a living. So I studied the normal and I stayed in the normal. And so my hobby of making people, entertain, to laugh and to do music stayed on the hobby side, my passion. But answering your question is probably what attracted me or attracts me of that is actually to numb out the pain. We have worries, we have anxieties, and we have issues in life, and life is fragile. Yeah. So usually, how do we cope with fragility of life? Can be health, can be financial problems, can be a physical threat. Yeah. So how do we deal with it? Usually is either we develop a huge ego, and the ego can express different ways. It's to protect ourselves. Yeah, in my way was actually to have a shield. And if you listen to some of the comedians, they actually have the same intention, to entertain people so you numb out the pain, that you just life becomes lighter and you joy and to do something. But that was actually why I wanted to become a stand-up comedian. But I kept my passions in that sense more on the hobby side going forward through my life.
I thank you for opening up, mentioning the bullying, because I'm sure that has some aspect into where you wanted to go and what you wanted to do in life. And perhaps life was all about even pursuing comedy and entertainment, numbing the pain instead of doing something about it. What happened in your life that suddenly you said, I need to switch?
Uh, that's a great question. So for me, I started doing judo, yeah, to be strong to defend myself. And I basically used it early on, to put others back into their seat, the ones who wanted to bully aggravate. Yeah, so it was a physical reaction. But I prefer not to go aggressive. I like harmony. So for me, to entertain people, to have the joy, and to use music, yeah, was a part which actually what I really wanted to do. So as I kept my career path on the judo side, really, 4 or 5 hours a day, competing basically every weekend, at a higher and higher level, I asked myself, this is not me. This is defense mechanism. Yeah. And now, of course, through that, I nourished my ego because I was winning, championships and fights. but it wasn't me. And that was the moment where I said, hold a second. What I really want to do is, that's not my profession. I didn't see myself doing judo to a certain age and then study something alibi around sports and at the end up with a dojo, because my vocation is not to train people on martial arts, because you have people who do that. And when it's your vocation and passion, then it's fine. And that's actually part of the learnings later in life also, because at the, I did not study dramatic arts. I studied business administration and marketing. And marketing, you can use storytelling, you can use certain parts of that, my passion into it. But at the age of 33, I had actually achieved what I was supposed to achieve. My father was very happy with me, yeah, because I had a family, I had a house, and I was managing director of a company. And then I said, okay, now what do I do with the next 33 years of my life? And I had recognized that in life and the work, if you do the work only to support yourself financially and maybe to nourish your ego, this is not fulfilling. And then I recognized actually, and that was, I listened to an artist from Latin America in Colombia. He has created called El Colegio del Cuerpo, which is a dancing school for kids on the slums to bring them out, and to do modern contemporary dance, which is amazing. And he said a sentence which stuck in me. He said, if education is not vocational, it doesn't serve you anything. And then I said, hold a second. It's actually correct. I am the absent of my own education.
Mm-hmm.
Primary, secondary, tertiary education. I learn about everything else except about myself. So therefore, my life is empirical. Whoever I bump into, if I'm lucky born, it's a little bit easier. If I'm unlucky born, it's harder to get there. But then whoever tells you something, you do this because your vocation, which you have as a child naturally, is not taken forward. And so at the age of 33, I changed my life. I changed job. I changed marriage. Then I changed country, trying to find, but I started to actually then to look into finding myself, and I started to do personal development, different methodologies, just to find out and learn more about myself. And so, in a sense, that was also, and you referred to it at a time in Mexico, I founded a continuous medical education foundation, and I learned that we were giving. And I learned the hard way that by giving, you don't actually help necessarily. Yes, you have humanitarian crisis and somebody needs to, survive. There you need to help. But actually, nobody wants to be helped. Actually, from a dignity point of view, helping someone is unfair because you come from a privileged area wanting to help. This is not what you want. People want to climb up the ladder themselves. So they want to be supported in their own journey and their own effort. Yeah, not here's someone who's so proud and wants to shine and nourish his own ego. Yeah, because you've made money and now you want to give it back, which is a fundamental flaw. So, why I'm explaining that? Because if our education would be vocational, we would discover and know our vocation, and then we go into our superpower, which is the skill set on education. And if we match that our vocation becomes our profession, then work is no longer work. And that's actually a book I'm publishing in December, which is called On Vocation, How to Align Your Purpose with Your Profession. And there's my own painful journey into it and how I end up doing what I do today. There is my learnings on personal development methodologies. So the stuff exists, which should be portion of the secondary, at least, education, if not tertiary education of anyone. And the third one is 7 steps I guide people through, to align their vocation with their profession. And that has happened to conversations back and forth, not knowing details, but again, I was talking. And then these many people they've spoken to, they said, why don't you write it down? Why don't you write a book? Because I didn't want to write a book for me writing a book. Yeah, it was just them saying, couldn't you write it down? And so it's getting published now. But again, that's a little bit of the essence of the fundamental flaw of your education not being vocational. And then you focus on results, you focus on fantasies, and you nourish your ego rather than focusing on your intuition and doing what you really want to do. And if you can use your job to have a contribution to the greater good for people on planet, It's very comforting, even if it's hard. Even you have changes because life is a roller coaster and things change. Yeah, and sometimes might be come unexpectedly. But that's the part where today I'm grateful for my roller coaster, the learnings, and I is something which I take. Also, the professionals have an impact investing. Yeah, we can talk about it, but also very much on the own emotional and personal side.
It's incredible to hear you speak, and you definitely have a reader in me, because I find that I had a moment in my life where this I had an opportunity to reinvent myself. And I noticed what people do is very attached to who people are. And when you don't like what you do, you don't like who you are. So what you're saying is incredibly powerful. If you can align your vocation with your profession, you can be happy, you can be fulfilled, you can have impact. And and you're right, your criticism on secondary and tertiary and beyond education does not involve who you know and who you are and what you like and how does that changed. Because take us back when you decided you were 33, you wanted to you changed everything. How did you kill that past that you had to be able to go to Mexico, to be able to reinvent yourself? How did you do that?
So actually, the first LinkedIn article I wrote on my profile is that one. That's about
I
10
know.
something years ago. Okay, yes, I've seen it, yes. But the point is, was reflection. I was in a job, in a corporate job, yeah, and it was healthcare. It's actually great, you know. The product is a great product because yeah, it's about, the health of the people. Again, it's not preventive medicine, it's corrective medicine. Yeah, there's different portion because a lot of things can be prevented. And by the way, a lot of the diseases, a lot of them are psychosomatic. So they initiate through a mental problem, a trauma or something in the back, in the past, which then it develops in the same sense. There's a lot of science around that. But I was in a job and I had achieved all the things I wanted, the goals I had to be successful. Yeah. Golden handcuffs in a corporation, with all the brand name and the service around and teams and the people. Yeah. I had a family at home. Yeah, and then I did not live the life I wanted. I did not dedicate myself on what I wanted. And Ahmed, this is exactly as you said. Because and I love that you're saying, I've learned something here from you. Thank you for that. Because if what you do doesn't match to who you are, you will not be fulfilled. And that is what, for me, the decision was then, okay, I need to change. I need to get out of here. I felt in the golden cage. I felt handcuffed. I felt my life was materially great, but not from a meaning. So I decided in 2008, January 2008, when the financial crisis started, when stuff was really tough, to leave my golden handcuffs, a corporate job, and go into a roller coaster of a late stage startup with a high burn rate and trying to fix it. I wasn't yet on the impact side. It was just getting out of there. Yeah. And in parallel, trying to learn myself. So I looked at different personal development methodologies. So I did the Jung colors, I did MBTI, the neurolinguistic programming, Enneagram, human design. Yeah, you go into quantum consciousness, you go to some more metaphysical things, trying to match that so that life makes sense. I went into meditation. Yeah, I went into different ways. So on one side, to ease the pain, to numb the pain, because it's painful. It was risky. A lot of stress, when you have 5 kids. Yeah. So you have a lot of responsibility and still trying to, if I would have done that very early on, before having a family, you can take risks which are very different. Yeah. But when you're on the train, and you have your standard of living and certain things and the schools to pay, and things to deliver, and then you do this. So this was really, some of my friends asked me, why are you doing this? This is crazy. And I couldn't say why. It was only clear that I needed a change. And that's where, again, this was also not a pivot moment, everything was fine. It was just, jumping off a cliff and then diving. and trying to see what comes out and what are the next steps.
It's so courageous. Definitely, the criticism is hard to hear. The pain is hard to hear. And thank you for listing those different ways to know yourself, because that those frameworks provide clarity. And I love your analogy of diving the cliff. My dad uses it a lot, and I think that people that not never jump don't learn to fly or fall. So, why do you think people confuse activity? Let's go into like impact, because I want to go into that area where you've been incredibly successful and really where you shine, because that's who you are. So, why do you think people confuse activity with impact too often? Like, especially philanthropy, people think I need to do something to have impact.
Great question. So my learning is number one, the first confusion is you confuse a fantasy with intuition. Both are expressed through a desire, but one is result oriented, the other is path oriented. So, for example, I'm a hobby musician. As a hobby musician, I like to sing and I happen to play some bass and some guitar, and I have also my band here in Geneva. And throughout my life, I've always put musicians together because it's very important for me. But if my goal is to be a rock star, even if I am the rock star, my life might be void, empty. And you see this with a lot of artists, which then get lost. But if I love to do music, no matter for whom, it's actually first for me. And then if others like it, why not? It's a different path. That's just an analogy. And so that's a first confusion. We believe I have a dream. And if the dream is goal oriented, most likely, even if you achieve it, you will not be happy. The second component is you have to distinguish, is the desire I have to feed my ego, which is a protective mechanism because we are fragile, or is it because it's my intuition? That's the path I want to go no matter what, so that I am dare to walk the talk. And that's really something different. And one is you can only feel when you feel inside, but when you're busy outside always, yeah, looking at and making sure, yeah, and you might be hung up in the past, which is the big problems that they're not living the present because you live the past, yeah, and they have a high grade of frustration usually, and very often depression. Or you might have an anxiety of the future, and you're worried about the future. Then also you're not living the present, and life is too short. So those are the takeaways for me. Because if you do what you love and express who you are, even life will be difficult. You will have problems around. Yeah, it can be anything because there's no safe place in the world. No one. So that's the part where at least life is worth. So one of the questions I actually place people a lot, also in workshops on some of the stage, is if you imagine yourself at your deathbed, you're leaving this world. Yeah, what is it you would people like you to remember who you are or were? Yeah, and what is it where you say my life has been worth it? Yeah, because of the contribution. When you start that, you start actually looking into vocational topics, which is part of the 7 steps in my book. For me, the aha moment I had when doing something good in the Mexican jungle by giving and donating material resulted later on in a child being operated on and then to die because there was no pharmacy, there was no, you know, it was just a mobile unit coming in and then moving out. Triggered me, first of all, thinking, hey, have I thought about putting myself in the shoes of the other? Or is it just that I want to help? Because I make money now, I want to give back. Because that's ego driven. And I felt guilty. Or is it I put myself in the shoes of others? That's when I also recognized later on, when I learned about impact investing, where you use capital as a force for good. And in the impact investing, you use the intentionality of capital, but also the additionality. You want to put capital where it's tough to put, where normally normal people only looking for the financial returns would hesitate to do. And so you have to adjust the return reward structures in order to do so. But that's when I said, okay, if you would have invested in healthcare, primary healthcare delivery, in that geographies, that child would have never died. So
Mhm.
rather than for me to come and help, is actually to put myself at risk, to put myself in it at a peer level, not from a privileged one. I'm here to teach. And that is the sentence I actually use is, and today I work between the non-for-profit world and the for-profit world. Yeah, we are in the humanitarian development and impact investing space. And the learning is for me actually is, yes, you need to give a person a fish sometimes for them to survive in very fragile settings where we are. But then you need to teach the first person how to fish. But you have to do this with an eye of later on wanting to invest in its fishing business, because that's where you look at economic empowerment. You're not looking at poverty uplift because nobody wants to be uplifted. Yeah. Everybody wants to have a fair chance, to have an incremental better life. And that's for me was my takeaway in a sequence from being bullied, numbing out my pain, then to recognize that I'm ego driven. I'm feeding my ego because I want to be successful. Then I want to help because I'm privileged. And I figured out that helping doesn't help. It's not actually not fair from a dignity point of view because I put myself above another person. But you need to have a continuum of care to actually create a transformation. And I have the lens on using money funding, can be for non-for-profit or for-profit or different things in between. So that's my professional life. And therefore, my vocation to impact lives and share profits. And my superpower, which is in my case, I learned business administration and marketing. And what I do is I look at how to increase the perceived value of brands, products, and organization. And by doing this, it leads to more partnerships, more clients, transactions, and more money. And if I match this now with impact lives and share profits, the space I'm in is matching my vocation and my superpower, which is the technical side, on my profession. And that is also now the outcome of the book, which wasn't meant to be, kind of empirically happened, which is actually the part also for me to further impact lives for people to understand how to align purpose and profession.
What, how profound, honestly. I loved capital as a force for good. I love that you don't give a man to fish, you teach him to fish, but then you invest in their fishing business. Like being an investor is an incredibly powerful thing, and being exposed puts you at equal footing. I understand now what you're saying about the difference between path and goal oriented. Path oriented means getting there every day, waking up to do it, and being at equal footing, no matter if you have an audience or no, if you're successful or no. And that fulfillment comes from because it's your vocation, right? You will do it anyways. You've been incredibly successful at raising close to $1 billion for impact ventures, something that's incredibly difficult. It's hard to raise money for profitable things. For non-for-profit things, it's also hard in a different way. But what was a deal perhaps that you almost didn't do, but your gut said, we need to do this?
So, okay. There are many deals. And by the way, sometimes deals fail. And it's painful if you know that the company's purpose is really good and have a lot of beneficiaries behind, but you need to keep going. And if just let me put this in the context today. Just since early this year, 30% of the government aid money, ODA money, for humanitarian aid is gone, and more money is going away. So that is for the most vulnerable areas extremely difficult because more people will die out of hunger, out of diseases, and these things because the money is no longer there. So that's one side. The second thing is investors right now saying, yeah, sustainability, I don't know, ESG, I don't know. Let's just make sure we grow and financial numbers are good. And that's what they're focusing on. And I sit actually in between, where I want to bring capital, to drive impact. And so despite the hardship and the pain going on of many organizations on the ground now running out of money, and people no longer doing what they do, there's one portion of it, which is in the past, maybe, the so-called soft power of governments. Yeah. It created a dependency on certain geographies on getting that money flowing, but it didn't focus on economic empowerment. So despite the hardship, there is actually a pivot. And I'm talking a lot about that on a professional side, where there is an opportunity in every crisis, is a silver lining. But for me, sometimes I feel it like the what's called the hound dog, is it? The what's the film called? When you basically the same day you repeat and you think believe things become better, and then you kind of don't think they're becoming better. And people have been asking me, why don't you do something else? It's very hard to raise funds. It's very difficult to invest. It's difficult to have the financial returns. The impact is much easier to have, but not the financial returns. So to raise a grant money is easier. To raise for-profit money is easier. But now to have a mix of that, yeah, is a difficult one. And as an impact investor, you sit between two chairs. You have the financial guy saying, "Hey, you say you do financial returns. It's not true. You're a tree hugger, and it's only about being social good. You do by the do-gooders." And you have a lot of philanthropists saying, or aid workers saying, "Hey, don't talk about an IRR, a return. This is not my job. My job is here to help." Yeah. So you're kind of a disguised shark. You say you're social, but you're not really social. Because the fundamental flaw, again, of nature, you need to make money to survive. And when you have made it, then you give money back. And that's a vicious circle. So in the same sense now, if I look at, we tried and we've done investments, very risky ones, and they have not succeeded. Or we saw certain things happening and then COVID comes in. And after COVID, the interest rate goes up, hardship on the ground, because with inflation plus supply chain problems plus a higher interest rate, vulnerable countries are hard hits, and some of our investees, which were doing well, suddenly struggled. And it's not in the news ever because it's not in the Western world. And that's what you see. And then you discuss with the ones who seeded the catalytic capital saying, "Hey, you said you want to bring in private investors." Is yes, but look where the markets are. It's tough. Yeah. Or you have investors saying, "Hey, don't talk about me now investing in Africa." Yeah. And for sure, not equity. Way too difficult. So it's very difficult to do. It's painful to do. Yeah. But as I love to do what I do, I just keep going. I don't know whether I've answered your question.
You have it in a very profound way, and I'm going to highlight how you said most people are profits first, impact later, and there's people who are impact first, profits later, and then there's a very tiny sliver, perhaps the hardest part where it combines, and the narrative, the political instabilities or changes have come to people saying forget ESG. That's a stupid way of looking at business. And then there's other people who went more diehard and said, no, ESG is right. Where do you feel the balance lies? What is the correct way to look at this? Because I don't think it's the same framework than an investment. This should be called something else.
You have a good point. Yes. So if you only invest for the sake of a financial return, at whatever price, you eventually will do a lot of harm. And if you basically don't care because you don't care about anything else but your financial return and your financial stability, your bank account and your family, and the rest, I don't care, and having a great life, yeah, this is short-sighted and it's hugely egoistic. If you go on the other side, where you say, I want to help, I'm here to help and I have to help, and you happen to be paid by a wealthy country, mostly taxpayers' money. You travel around the world and you do good and you say, these guys are bad because it's a financial return, I need to help the people. This is neither okay because it's unfair for the people. You put yourself in a privileged position and you want to help, well, then, and then you are trapped too. So either way of extreme does not consider the effects, the depletion or the contribution I might have to humanity and to the planet. And for me, that's the piece where you don't want to go in one extreme, you don't want to go in other extreme, but you actually want to use both blessings of both worlds, yeah, to basically create wealth, create stability, but not by putting others' lives at risk or livelihood in the planet at risk. So those are my takeaways.
Wonderful. And I really connect with this as I run a family office and an investment management company. And there's a word that I have a beef with, that I have a problem with, and it's maximizing return. We are looking to maximize return. And one day I remember talking and saying, why don't we use the word adequate return? Adequate. Because adequate, maybe it's not the best word, it's not the sexiest word. You're a marketer. But imagine if I told investors we're looking for adequate returns, they might say, no, or either protect it to the max, or roll the dice and explode it. But I think this new wave of thinking has needs to permeate in the market. I am on your side of, if you maximize returns, you have to cut other people's legs to get there. You need to cut the environment. You need to cheat the tax system. You need to, because that's what it means. You need to do things that are not 100% ethical. Understanding adequacy, I think, is even better. Is saying, okay, if I'm going to invest, what is the adequate return? What is the adequate impact too? So it goes to both balances. Let's go to the more philosophical part, because I think you have a lot of depth in that side. You said by 33, you wanted to change your ego, or you were there by ego, by family pressures. Your parents were happy for you. You built what everybody else said it's the golden life, but you saw it as golden handcuff. What about legacy? What do you feel about that side? Is that something that's still driving you, or is there a third internal pressure that is still driving your work today?
So I like what you say here, because even the word legacy can be pure ego. Yes, that's one possibility. Or legacy can mean what I give with nothing in return. So there's a fine line. And again, you all want to make a difference in the world. Why wouldn't you do an effort? Yeah. So there is a certain extent of an ego is actually natural, is fine, yeah, but not against it, let's say an impact, negative impact on the others. So there's a fine line. So when you want to leave a legacy, it's like I want to do something, I want to build something, and people say, "Oh, you remember Florian? This was amazing. What a legacy!" Then I'm nourishing my ego, and that's a fine line. How do you look at a legacy, just from a word perspective? I would rather say contribution than the legacy. Yeah, if I have contributed something nicely, people will remember me nicely. Yeah, if I want to have a huge legacy, fine, but then I'm nourishing my ego. So therefore, it's a fine line. So the same is also if you want to do this from a sustainability equation. And I'm just saying sustainability is for humanity. 10 billion people on the globe, to feed them without killing their livelihood and stability, and the boundaries why we why we have life on Earth, yeah, on the globe, is a fine line. And the more educated people are, the better their livelihood is, and the less actually they have children and grow. So the natural way is actually that humanity will over time shrink. So to have a focus on growth, no matter what, doesn't work. It's more the efficiency. It's actually the economic principle that with limited resources, you want to have a maximum output, but it doesn't have to be financial output only. That's when you look at whatever Japanese culture. They've been tricky for quite some time, and they're not importing, and living on immigration. Like in the Western world, on the US, growth has come through immigration, no matter what. Yeah. So there's a fine line of how can you make sure that education is everywhere. So you talk teaching to fish. Yeah. That wealth is distributed so that you don't have to give fish. And then you look at how to foster economic empowerment, for people on a fair base. So this is where it's a fine equation that success doesn't mean financial success only, and growth shouldn't be based on growth only. Now, what has happened over time is you have industrial revolutions where there is a leapfrog of efficiency. So you need actually less input to get more output. Yeah, it's like with data, like with AI. Yeah, it will increase leapfrog efficiency of humanity. And those are the pieces where, if you think not only me, myself, and I, because you're afraid, but you have an equation of a balance and a sustainable way to go, where you're not distracting yourself, you're not doing against someone else suffering or dying. Yeah, that's the difficult part. But again, it's very difficult to handle because the nature of humanity is fragile. We're fragile born. We are afraid, and we protect ourselves, and that builds all these egos up, which basically clash then in today's world. Countries, religions, wealth, or whatever that is.
Very, very profound. You've spoken a lot about devotion. Have you questioned your devotion to this path?
Are you talking about vocation or devotion?
Vocation.
Vocation. So I ended up what I do today by serendipity because I had no tools for my education for me to do what I wanted to do. And that's where again, I had a painful life, a roller coaster life. I put myself several times financially fully at risk, and my family with some collateral damage. It's not just me, I have 5 kids and my wife and things. But in a sense, I couldn't help myself, yeah, because life is too short. So therefore, I didn't want to do this just no matter what in an ego-driven way. And therefore, I talked with the family and see and where we go and where we should go, and I try to balance it. But for me, it goes back that if you discover your vocation early on, and then you define how you can use your vocation professionally, that's when life becomes really cool. And some few people in the world, maybe 1%, have had the courage or the lightning or, somebody triggering or something triggering it. But even though you might see a big artist, a big stand-up comedian, you have some famous names. Some of them, are in depression. Some others have committed suicide. Yeah. Which doesn't mean the goal is to be a famous artist. It is the path. That's the difficult part. To not deviate, because you have to manage constantly your ego. We all have ego, and it expresses to different level. And that's where you need to get grounded on the same level, and then keep going and stay
Keep
humble.
going. Florian, what's a quiet bet you're placing on the future of perhaps capital or leadership or on yourself?
A bet from talking about me or in general happening.
Yeah, what are you doing quietly that's like an investment perhaps in capital or leadership or in yourself that a lot of people don't know about?
Oh, so probably the big investment I do is meditation. I meditate regularly because it keeps me grounded and present, and it basically helps me not react to problems around me or have them less affecting me. And it also keeps me, because vocation evolves over time, just to ask myself, am I still on the good way I want to be? Or do I want to do something else? And maybe in a sense, as you're teasing me here, 5 months ago, I didn't know that I would write a book. Yeah. And now, even before publishing the book, because, I've been talking about it for quite some time with a lot of people, I'm now giving in 2 weeks a first workshop to MBA students at Oxford University on how to align the vocation and profession and to walk them through the steps. So that's a new way, a path which I'd never thought about, and where I smile and I say, this is beautiful. Yeah, there's a way that this can reach more people, and at the end, I can do my little bit to some of the young people who are actually in a phase where they can still decide, or discover, or have the courage to say, this is my vocation, here's the profession I want to go for. That's the path which is just evolving as we speak, and I'm very
Incredibly
excited about it.
powerful. Absolutely. Teaching is the greatest form of service. And definitely when you write this book, I'm serious. Once it comes out, I will definitely be a reader. What would you say to a person that's listening that wants to make impact but is still stuck and can't do it? What would your advice be?
Um, there are many facets, and even when I look at the 7 steps, some step might be more important than others. So the point is the following. You should ask yourself, am I living my life or the life of others? You should ask yourself, am I living the present life or am I chasing a carrot in the future or being stuck on something in the past? So that you gain freedom to do the things which are important for you, not against anyone. And I'm not saying you have to do like I did, pivot everything, because that's not, again, I was lost. There are no other means. But it's really that question. And therefore, in order to get inside of you, you need to step out of the hamster wheel, because otherwise you cannot just noise, 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 noise. You keep going and feeding and more information. And that's the moment where I can recommend people to do meditate, or you walk, or you run, or you do the sport, whatever you do, so that the brain slows down. You're not bombarded by a lot of information or things outside, and you ask yourself, what can I do to make my life more meaningful for me? And if I want to serve somebody, what would that be? And then sometimes, and I've seen that with many people, amazing things come up. And it's not important things, it can be the family, it can be something, can be child, can be community, can be nature, can be anything, But then you see these people and things are different because what you do fulfills you so much, and then it's contagious to others.
Amazing. Florian, I want to thank you so much for coming on. This was a super enlightening, different point of view that I think most people will profit and benefit from listening to. You've definitely made an impact on me. And in this short 45 minutes, I've already learned so much from you. So definitely have a reader. How can people connect with you, read your book, or keep learning and reach out?
Three ways. One is LinkedIn. That's the easiest, the digital virtual card. Yeah. Then also you
Mhm.
might find some information on a website called on-vocation.com. Yeah. That's just my coordinates. Yeah. Again, I'm here to help. I'm here to support. Yeah. And whether this is a talk, whether this is a video, whether it's a conversation like we have, whether it's a workshop, those are the things I'm passionate about, to inspire people to impact lives and share profits.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Florian. And I will tag those links onto the description if you'd like to go check it out. But definitely, I'm super grateful you were here and humbled to learn from you. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Ahmad, for inviting me. I didn't know what I'm walking in here. You were well prepared and you caught me from the first moment, but that was a very, very nice time together. Thank you so much.
Thank you.